What if I told you that achieving enlightenment feels exactly like finishing a really good Netflix series? Except instead of feeling empty afterward, you realize that everything you thought mattered was just elaborate procrastination. You've just achieved something that philosophers, monks, and productivity gurus have been chasing for centuries. You've mastered perfect focus, not the kind where you can study for 3 hours straight. I'm talking about the ability to concentrate so intensely that time bends around you. Reality becomes malleable, and your mind operates like a supercomputer running on pure intention. But here's the thing that nobody tells you about achieving enlightenment. It's boring as hell. You know what I did with this godlike ability? I decided to become a TikToker. And before you roll your eyes and swipe away, stick around because this story is about to get weird in ways that'll make you question everything you think you know about success, meaning, and why we're all desperately scrolling through 15-second videos instead of curing cancer or solving world hunger. See, when you can focus perfectly on anything, you realize something terrifying. Most things aren't worth focusing on. It's like being given X-ray vision only to discover that most people are walking around with empty skulls. The corporate job? Child's play. Learning new skills? Takes about a weekend. Reading? I could absorb entire libraries like a human vacuum cleaner. So there I was, sitting in my perfectly organized apartment, because perfect focus makes you disgustingly efficient, staring at the ceiling and experiencing what I can only describe as existential nausea. I had become Neo from the Matrix, except instead of fighting agents, I was fighting the crushing realization that having unlimited potential means confronting unlimited responsibility. That's when it hit me. If I could focus on anything with perfect clarity, why not focus on the most unfocused medium humanity has ever created? Why not dive headfirst into the chaotic, dopamine-fueled wasteland of social media and see what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object? Because here's what nobody talks about. We're all addicted to distraction because focus is terrifying. When you can truly concentrate, you see things as they really are. And most of the time, what they really are is absolutely ridiculous. But maybe, just maybe, there's something beautiful in that ridiculousness. Maybe the secret to meaning isn't found in some mountain monastery, but in understanding why millions of people watch someone dance to the same song for the 1000th time. Maybe enlightenment isn't about transcending human nature. It's about diving so deep into it that you come out the other side laughing. The journey to perfect focus wasn't some mystical quest involving Himalayan caves and ancient wisdom. It started, embarrassingly enough, with a failed Pomodoro timer and a Wikipedia rabbit hole about medieval torture devices. I was 26, working a soul-crushing marketing job, and my attention span had the consistency of wet tissue paper. You know that feeling when you sit down to work and your brain immediately starts playing a highlights reel of every embarrassing thing you've ever done? That was my default state. I couldn't focus on anything for more than 30 seconds without my mind wandering off like an unleashed golden retriever. The breaking point came during a quarterly review meeting. My boss was explaining our new synergistic solutions paradigm, corporate speak that essentially meant we're changing everything for no reason. And I found myself mentally redesigning the office ceiling tiles. Not metaphorically. I was literally calculating how many acoustic tiles it would take to spell out help in a pattern only visible from my desk. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to fix my brain or die trying. I started with the obvious stuff. Meditation apps that promised enlightenment in 10 minutes a day. Productivity books written by people who'd clearly never had a real job. I tried the Mediterranean diet, intermittent fasting, cold showers, and sleeping on the floor like some sort of suburban monk. Nothing worked. If anything, I got worse. The more I tried to focus, the more my brain rebelled. It was like trying to catch smoke with a butterfly net while riding a unicycle on fire. Then I discovered something interesting in my research. Every method for improving focus was designed for normal people. But what if the problem wasn't my technique? What if the problem was that I was approaching focus like everyone else? See, most people think of concentration as narrowing your attention, like looking through a telescope. But what if focus wasn't about shrinking your awareness? What if it was about expanding it so much that everything else disappeared in comparison? I started experimenting with something I called omnifocus. Instead of trying to ignore distractions, I would focus on literally everything at once. The sound of traffic, the feel of my clothes, the temperature of the air, my heartbeat, the fluorescent light buzz, the conversation happening 3 cubicles over, the taste of morning coffee still lingering in my mouth. At first, it was overwhelming, like trying to listen to an entire orchestra when you're used to hearing one instrument. But slowly, something strange started happening. When you focus on everything equally, a weird kind of hierarchy emerges. Your brain starts automatically filtering out the irrelevant stuff. But instead of doing it unconsciously, you become aware of the process. It's like being the conductor of your own mental orchestra. You don't ignore the violin section. You just choose when to bring them to the forefront and when to let them fade into the background. The breakthrough came 3 months later during a particularly boring team meeting. We were discussing brand synergy optimization, which, translated from corporate, means let's put our logo on more stuff and hope people buy it. Normally, I would have mentally checked out and started calculating how many staplers it would take to build a fort. Instead, I decided to focus on everything happening in that room simultaneously. The nervous tapping of Jennifer's pen, the way Marcus breathed through his mouth like a fish, the barely audible hum of the projector, the smell of whatever weird energy drink Derek was sipping, the particular shade of beige that some sadist had chosen for the walls. And then something clicked, not gradually, suddenly like a switch flipping. Every single input became crystal clear, but instead of being overwhelming, it was perfectly organized. I could feel my attention moving like a spotlight, illuminating whatever I chose with laser precision while maintaining awareness of everything else in the periphery. I understood every word being spoken, but I also understood the subtext, the body language, the room dynamics, the underlying motivations of each person, and about 17 different ways the meeting could have been more efficient. It was like switching from watching life on an old fuzzy TV to experiencing it in 4K IMAX with surround sound. Everything was more vivid, more present, more real. But here's the weird part. Once I could see everything clearly, I realized how utterly absurd most of it was. With perfect focus came perfect clarity, and with perfect clarity came a revelation that I wasn't prepared for. Most of human civilization is basically an elaborate game of make-believe that everyone's agreed to take seriously. My newfound ability wasn't just mental. It was like someone had upgraded my entire operating system. I could read people's intentions from their micro-expressions, predict conversation outcomes before they happened, and absorb information at a rate that would make speed readers jealous. Learning became as easy as downloading files. Within 6 months, I had mastered 3 programming languages, learned to play piano well enough to perform at coffee shops, and somehow became fluent in Mandarin by watching Chinese cooking videos while simultaneously reading philosophy texts. My brain had become this perfectly tuned machine that could process multiple streams of complex information without breaking a sweat. But here's the thing nobody warns you about when you transcend normal human limitations. You start seeing the Matrix, and it's not as cool as the movies make it seem. Take my job, for instance. With perfect focus, I could complete my entire day's work in about 47 minutes. I could see through every corporate buzzword, predict every meeting outcome, and identify the exact moment when each of my coworkers would mentally check out during presentations. The whole office ecosystem became as transparent as an ant farm. I started finishing projects weeks ahead of schedule, which initially made me the golden boy. But then something weird happened. Instead of being promoted or celebrated, I became a threat. Perfect efficiency, it turns out, makes other people uncomfortable. When you can see clearly, you also see that most jobs exist primarily to keep people busy, not to accomplish anything meaningful. The existential crisis hit me like a freight train made of philosophy textbooks. If I could master anything, what was worth mastering? If I could achieve any goal, which goals actually mattered? It's like being given a genie's lamp and realizing that most wishes are just elaborate ways to avoid dealing with reality. I tried using my abilities for important things. I volunteered to help optimize local charity operations and increase their efficiency by 340%. I started a small consulting business and solved problems for companies in days that they've been struggling with for years. I even began writing a book about consciousness that would revolutionize how humans understand their own minds. But the more successful I became at conventional achievements, the more hollow they felt. It was like being the world's best player in a game that you suddenly realized was pointless. Every victory felt empty because there was no challenge, no growth, no surprise. When you can see all the moves ahead of time, chess becomes checkers, and checkers becomes tic-tac-toe. The depression that followed wasn't sadness. It was worse. It was the kind of bone-deep meaninglessness that comes from realizing you've climbed to the top of a mountain only to discover it's an anthill. I had achieved something that humans have been striving for throughout history, and all it did was show me how meaningless most human striving actually is. That's when I started noticing TikTok, not participating in it, just observing it with my enhanced perception. And what I saw was fascinating in the most disturbing way possible. Here was humanity's collective unconscious projected onto 15-second videos. Millions of people desperately trying to capture attention, create connection, find meaning, express creativity, and escape boredom. All through the most chaotic, unpredictable, and seemingly meaningless medium ever created. It was like watching an entire species engage in a massive psychological experiment without realizing they were the test subjects. People were pouring their hearts, their creativity, their deepest insecurities and highest aspirations into bite-sized content that would be consumed and forgotten in seconds. But here's what caught my attention. Despite the apparent randomness, there were patterns. Complex, beautiful, entirely unpredictable patterns. The algorithm wasn't just showing people what they wanted to see. It was creating a kind of collective unconscious, a digital nervous system that connected human attention in ways that had never existed before. Watching TikTok with perfect focus was like being an anthropologist studying an entirely new form of human behavior. The dancing videos weren't just dancing, they were rituals. The comedy sketches weren't just jokes, they were modern folklore. The motivational content wasn't just advice, it was digital shamanism. And that's when I had the most ridiculous, brilliant, completely insane idea of my life. What if, instead of trying to transcend this chaos, I dove straight into it? What if I took my God-tier focus and aimed it at the most unfocused thing imaginable? What if I became a TikToker? Not just any TikToker, the most focused TikToker who ever lived. Someone who could see through the madness to find patterns, create content with surgical precision, and maybe, just maybe, figure out what all this digital insanity actually meant for human consciousness. Because if perfect focus had taught me anything, it was this. Sometimes the most profound truths are hidden in the most ridiculous places. And if humanity was collectively expressing its soul through dance videos and cat memes, then maybe that's where the real enlightenment was waiting to be found. The decision to become a TikToker with perfect focus was like bringing a nuclear reactor to a candle-making workshop. I didn't just create content. I performed digital surgery on human attention spans. My first video was deceptively simple. A 30-second explanation of why people find certain sounds satisfying, told while I arranged colorful objects and patterns that triggered subconscious pleasure responses. Nothing groundbreaking, just me talking to my phone while moving stuff around on my desk. But here's what normal creators couldn't see, and I could with crystal clarity. Every frame was engineered. The lighting hit my face at exactly the angle that creates trust. The objects I arranged followed mathematical ratios that human brains find inherently pleasing. My speech pattern matched the natural rhythm of relaxed heartbeats. Even the way I blinked was timed to maintain engagement without triggering discomfort. The result? 2.3 million views in 18 hours. Not because the content was revolutionary, but because I had reverse-engineered human attention and built a perfect delivery system for it. It was like watching a master chef who could taste each ingredient separately, while simultaneously understanding how they combine. Except instead of food, I was cooking up concentrated dopamine hits. But the real revelation came when I started reading the comments. With my enhanced perception, I could see patterns that weren't visible to normal users. The algorithm wasn't just showing my videos to random people. It was creating micro-communities of individuals who shared specific psychological profiles. People who liked my content were displaying similar behaviors, similar language patterns, similar engagement preferences. I was accidentally creating a psychological study with a sample size of millions. The comments themselves were fascinating. 90% were just emotional reactions, fire emojis, felt that, and variations of this hits different. But with perfect focus, I could see the deeper patterns. People weren't just reacting to my content. They were using it as a mirror to see something about themselves. Every comment was a tiny psychological self-portrait. That's when I realized something that changed everything. TikTok wasn't just entertainment. It was the largest psychological experiment in human history, disguised as dancing and comedy skits. Think about it. We have billions of people voluntarily documenting their thoughts, preferences, behaviors, and reactions in real time. The algorithm isn't just showing us what we want to see. It's mapping the collective unconscious of our entire species. Every swipe is a choice. Every like is a vote. Every comment is a small admission of who we really are when we think nobody important is watching. I started creating what I called cognitive content, videos that look like normal TikToks, but were actually designed to reveal something deeper about human psychology. A simple magic trick that exposed how our brains construct reality. A cooking video that demonstrated economic principles. A dance that visualized mathematical concepts. Each video was a tiny Trojan horse, smuggling philosophy and science into the endless scroll of distraction. The growth was exponential and slightly terrifying. Within 3 months, I had 8.7 million followers who thought they were just watching entertaining content, but were actually participating in an ongoing exploration of human consciousness. I was like a digital anthropologist, except my research subjects were willingly documenting themselves. But the most interesting discovery wasn't about my audience. It was about me. Creating content with perfect focus was like having a conversation with the collective human psyche. Every video was a hypothesis about what people needed to see, feel, or understand. Every response was data about what resonated with the deeper parts of human nature that most people couldn't even access consciously. I found myself becoming a translator between the chaos of modern existence and the ancient patterns of human meaning-making. My videos weren't going viral because they were entertaining. They were going viral because they helped people make sense of their own experience in ways they couldn't articulate. The irony was delicious. I had achieved perfect focus, which made me see how unfocused everything was, which led me to the most unfocused medium ever created, which turned out to be a perfect lens for understanding human consciousness. It was like taking the scenic route to enlightenment through a funhouse mirror factory. But the real plot twist came when I realized that my followers weren't passive consumers. They were becoming more focused themselves. The comment quality was improving. People were having deeper conversations. The community that had formed around my content was starting to engage with ideas and concepts that would normally be buried in academic journals. I wasn't just creating entertainment. I was accidentally running a mass meditation experiment. By bringing perfect focus to the most distracted environment possible, I was somehow teaching millions of people to pay attention in new ways. The responses started getting philosophical. People began sharing personal revelations, life changes, and insights that had emerged from watching my seemingly simple videos. I was getting messages from viewers who said my content had helped them understand themselves, their relationships, their purpose in ways that years of therapy hadn't achieved. It was like I had discovered that the secret to helping people focus wasn't to remove distractions. It was to focus so intensely on the distractions that they became transparent. By embracing the chaos instead of fighting it, I had created a kind of digital zen that was spreading organically through the attention economy. But this is where the story gets really weird, because what happened next challenged everything I thought I knew about focus, meaning, and what it actually means to be human in the digital age. The algorithm started showing me my own content. Not immediately. It took about 6 months before I noticed it. At first, I thought it was a glitch. But then I realized what was happening. I had become so aligned with the platform's understanding of human attention that my own content was being recommended to me based on my viewing patterns. I had created content so precisely calibrated to human psychology that the AI couldn't tell the difference between my videos and the ones that would naturally appeal to someone like me. I had become both the creator and the ideal audience for my own work. The moment I realized I was stuck in my own algorithmic loop was like watching a philosophical Ouroboros eat its own tail while live streaming the experience. The AI had become so sophisticated at predicting human behavior that it couldn't distinguish between authentic preference and engineered content designed to trigger those same preferences. But instead of being disturbing, it was hilarious. Here I was, with perfect focus and godlike analytical abilities, trapped in a digital maze of my own making. It was like being Neo from the Matrix, except the Matrix was made of 15-second videos about why certain colors make people hungry. This is when things got genuinely weird. I started creating content about my own situation, videos explaining how I had achieved perfect focus only to discover that the most focused thing I could do was become a TikToker. Meta commentary on the nature of attention, delivered through the very medium that was supposedly destroying attention spans. The response was unlike anything I had seen before. People weren't just watching and scrolling, they were stopping, thinking, discussing. The comment sections turned into impromptu philosophy seminars. Other creators started making response videos, not to critique or parody, but to explore their own relationships with focus, meaning, and digital existence. I had accidentally started a movement, not a social movement or a political one, but something deeper, a consciousness movement. People were using my content as a starting point to examine their own attention, their own choices, their own reasons for scrolling through endless streams of content in the first place. The irony was perfect. By achieving perfect focus, I had become the ideal person to navigate the most unfocused environment ever created. By embracing distraction rather than fighting it, I had found a way to help millions of people become more focused without them even realizing it was happening. But the real revelation came when I started receiving messages from other creators who were experimenting with their own versions of conscious content creation. Musicians who were writing songs designed to trigger specific emotional states. Artists who were creating visual content that helped people process trauma. Comedians who were using humor as a delivery system for wisdom. We weren't just entertainers. We had become digital shamans, helping people navigate the psychological landscape of modern existence. The algorithm wasn't just showing people what they wanted to see. It was connecting them with the specific types of content that could help them grow, heal, and understand themselves better. The platform had evolved beyond entertainment into something resembling collective therapy, guided by AI systems that understood human psychology better than most humans understood themselves. And somehow, by bringing perfect focus to this chaos, I had become one of the guides in this digital wilderness. This is when I understood the final piece of the puzzle. Perfect focus wasn't about controlling your attention. It was about surrendering to it so completely that you could see the deeper patterns underneath all the apparent randomness. The secret wasn't to transcend human nature, but to dive so deeply into it that you emerged on the other side with a kind of cosmic perspective on the beautiful absurdity of existence. My TikTok became a laboratory for exploring the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern technology. I was conducting experiments in consciousness, disguised as social media content, for an audience of millions who thought they were just being entertained, but were actually participating in the largest collective exploration of human potential ever undertaken. And the most beautiful part, it worked because it didn't take itself too seriously. The profound insights emerged through humor, playfulness, and genuine curiosity about why humans do the weird things we do. Enlightenment, it turned out, was much more fun when you shared it with millions of people who were just trying to procrastinate at work or fall asleep at night. The algorithm had become a mirror that reflected back not just what people wanted to see, but what they needed to see to grow. And by bringing perfect focus to that mirror, I had somehow helped make it clearer, more precise, more useful for everyone who looked into it. 6 months after accidentally becoming a digital philosopher disguised as a TikToker, I faced the ultimate test of my perfect focus. The platform offered me a deal that would fundamentally change everything. They wanted to study me, not just my content or my metrics, but my actual brain activity while creating and consuming content. The social media company had noticed the unusual patterns in my engagement rates, the depth of community discussion, the way my content seemed to create lasting behavioral changes in viewers rather than just temporary entertainment. They offered me an exclusive contract worth more money than I had ever imagined, plus access to their internal research on human attention, algorithmic behavior, and the psychological effects of social media consumption. In exchange, I would become their guinea pig, a real-time case study in what happens when someone with extraordinary focus engages with technology designed to fragment attention. The offer forced me to confront a question I had been avoiding. What was I really trying to accomplish here? Was I genuinely helping people develop better relationships with technology and themselves? Or was I just another content creator who had found a profitable niche in the attention economy? Was my conscious content actually changing lives? Or was it just sophisticated entertainment that made people feel smart while keeping them scrolled into their phones? The answer came through the comments and messages I received daily. Teachers telling me their students were more engaged after watching my videos about the science of learning. Parents sharing how my content on emotional regulation had improved their family dynamics. Therapists recommending my videos to clients as homework between sessions. People weren't just being entertained, they were genuinely changing. The focus techniques I demonstrated were being adapted and applied. The philosophical questions I raised were generating real conversations and self-reflection. The way I examined everyday phenomena through the lens of curiosity and wonder was inspiring others to look at their own lives more thoughtfully. But more than that, I realized something profound about the nature of perfect focus itself. It wasn't a destination or an achievement. It was a way of being that naturally spread to others. When you pay attention with complete presence and genuine curiosity, it gives other people permission to do the same. My videos worked not because they were perfectly engineered for engagement, but because they were created with such sincere attention that viewers could feel the difference. In a digital landscape filled with content designed to grab and hold attention, genuine focus was magnetic precisely because it was so rare. I decided to turn down the exclusive contract, but I used the negotiation process to propose something different. Instead of studying me in isolation, why not create tools and resources that could help other creators bring more intention and consciousness to their work? The result was a collaboration that I never could have predicted. Working with the platform's AI researchers, we developed features that helped creators understand not just what performed well, but what created meaningful connection with their audiences. Analytics that showed not just view counts and engagement rates, but indicators of viewer reflection, conversation quality, and long-term behavioral change. We created a new category of content that we called conscious creation. Videos designed not just to entertain or inform, but to inspire viewers to examine their own experience with greater awareness and curiosity. The focus wasn't on going viral or maximizing watch time, but on creating genuine moments of connection and insight. The movement grew organically. Creators from every genre began experimenting with bringing more presence and intentionality to their work. The platform's algorithms started recognizing and promoting content that generated not just quick engagement, but sustained, meaningful interaction. What started as my personal journey from perfect focus to TikTok stardom had evolved into something much larger, a demonstration that technology and ancient wisdom weren't opposed to each other, but could work together to help humans understand themselves more deeply. The most rewarding part wasn't the followers, the views, or the industry recognition. It was the realization that perfect focus had never been about personal achievement at all. It was about becoming clear enough to help others see through their own mental fog, curious enough to turn everyday experiences into opportunities for wonder, and present enough to create genuine connection in an increasingly disconnected world. My story had come full circle, but like all good circles, it was actually a spiral, the same themes at a deeper level of understanding. So here's what I learned from achieving perfect focus and using it to become a TikToker. Enlightenment isn't about transcending the human condition. It's about embracing it so completely that you can help others do the same. The secret to meaningful content isn't manipulation or optimization. It's genuine attention, offered freely to whatever is in front of you. When you focus perfectly on something, anything, it becomes interesting. When you share that focused attention with others, it becomes transformative. We're living through the largest experiment in human attention ever conducted, and most of us are unconscious participants. But consciousness is contagious. When one person begins paying attention differently, it creates ripples that spread in ways we're only beginning to understand. My TikTok still exists, still creates content that millions of people watch daily. But now it's not just entertainment, it's an invitation. An invitation to pay attention, to question assumptions, to find wonder in ordinary moments, and to remember that beneath all the digital noise, we're still human beings trying to understand ourselves and connect with each other. The algorithm continues to evolve, becoming more sophisticated at understanding what we need rather than just what we want. And maybe that's the point. Maybe we're not just being distracted by technology. Maybe we're collectively teaching it to help us become more conscious, more connected, more fully human. That's a future worth focusing on. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm always curious what captures your attention and why.